let's talk for a minute about why at the beginning and the early juncture of this class, why you want to cover this information about programming. How is that going to help a dyad or couple to be aware of this? For example, I can
let's just take for instance a question of a couple that are fighting about something. You know, whether the
I've never ever seen such a thing in my life. Okay, yeah. All right.
Me neither.
It never happens.
It's an urban legend. That's it. That's
You're right.
all there is to it.
Yeah.
Okay. What happens is this: is that they think that they identify with the anger, for instance, and the guy gets, let's say the guy gets angry because the girl says, well, you're squeezing this in the wrong place. And the guy says, well, he can't see that is a meta program, or he thinks that's a meta program. He thinks that's an emotional response. And it does have certain aspects to which are emotional, certainly. But it is not a metaprogrammatic response. It is rather a programmatic response. And somebody's going to have enough and run away. They're going to say, okay, I quit. I don't want to do this anymore. You're just too much. And they don't see that as excuse me, but they're not going to see that as a programmed response to a perceived threat. They're not going to see that they're running away because they're perceiving a threat, not because they've had enough. It's that there's a constant threat that they don't want to live with, but they don't see it that way. They say I just can't put up with this anymore. That may be true, but it's not an accurate statement.
Okay, so by having this language and framework, you can start to get at, okay, what's the actual problem? What's producing this thing going on between us, so we can look at it, maybe, see what it is and check to see if it's a real thing, it really is that thing you're treating as a threat, out to bite you,
Right. Right. So this is the introduction to these ideas, right? So this is kind of like the framework or the structure or the bare bones of it, the foundation of what it is we're going to talk to people about. And so when we present these ideas, what we want to do is we want to present them so that they can understand how it applies in their life. Okay. So you have to be able to give examples of how that applies. You've got to sit your little fanny down and think about, okay, what examples am I going to use to explain this? And what's the best example I have of how this is explained? Most often those examples are really personal, up close, and all that kind of stuff. They're in our faces because that's how we are. And those are the best explanations that there are because those are the ones that we understand best.
Right. We know them inside and outside from experience.
Right. Right.
Well, I know what's helpful to me in using this in a lot of times is it focuses on what are the parts that I actually can change, because there's a lot of things that I can't. I mean, I can't control anybody else, but these are the things in my own thinking that I can look at and change.
Okay, let's stop right there.
Okay.
Why would that even be a consideration? I can't control anybody else.
Because an experience that I've had, speaking, is thinking, oh, if I just say or do a certain thing, that's going to cause a change in my partner, in my husband or my business thing, that somehow I can prompt that. That will somehow make...
And you can't... Okay, stop for a second. Yes, you can. But what do you say and where do you say it so that you can provoke that change?
Okay, so like the difference between saying, quote, you made me feel, and what's the threat? Those are totally different.
Right.
questions or.
In other words, if you can actually deal with somebody and say, okay, how is this threatening you?
Mm-hmm.
Then we can get down to really what the problem is, right?
Yeah.
But if you say you made me feel this way, that's not true.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Now, what's the difference between those two statements, really?
Well, one is dealing with your own programming, and the other one is dealing with the other person's self-meta program.
No, either one is correct.
Okay.
The first one is a complete and total indulgence because you don't understand the structure of your own thinking, and so you're using a language and a moral code of some sort or the other that does not connect to reality at all. And if you recall, we have to have internal and external reality in balance, right?
Right.
And so to say that you made me can't balance in the external or the internal reality.
It's not true.
It's
a
fantasy.
Yeah, it is.
It's a fantasy. But if you don't have any other way to explain it, you're left with the fantasy. And so we want to take the fantasy out of it. Fantasy is not welcome, remember?
Right.
So what we want to actually accomplish here with folks is we want to say, okay, take the fantasy out and let's deal with honesty. Let's deal with brutal honesty with you, not with the other guy, with you. You be brutally honest with you. And let me show you why that's necessary. When I say what's the threat, I have to be brutally honest with myself to say, am I the threat? Am I threatening you here someplace? Mm. And I have to be vulnerable enough to ask that question, to say, okay, am I the screw up here?
Mm-hmm. Okay, yeah.
Okay. So you want to know why we're asking, why we want to put this structure in? That's the reason, because we want to take the fantasy out of the reality. Because reality itself is a big ass old abstraction, and it's hard to deal with. And so we don't need to throw fantasy in it just to complicate it.
Okay. Right. So that's going to give us a framework all throughout the class as things happen, where we can come back to this and we'll come back to both. It's not, let's not have fantasy. Let's balance internal, external, and here's a tool, the structure of programming we can have to look at the thing without the fantasy, and more nearly aligned with how the brain actually works. Okay.
Well, we have to understand the structure. That's for sure. And I don't mean that we have to say, yeah, that's an interesting mental concept. I mean that we actually have to follow the structure itself.
The Dyad Workshop on-demand videos will be available for purchase in our store soon. Follow us on Facebook at Forging Agreement for workshop release date announcements. Links in the description below. Before you go, remember to subscribe to the channel and hit that bell icon to stay up to date for new videos.